So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Jennifer Zeng. Jennifer was born in Sichuan province, China in 1966. She was arrested 4 times and held as a prisoner of conscience in a labor camp for a year. In the camp, she was physically and mentally abused and subjected to attempted brainwashing and electroshock treatment. She fled China in 2001 for Australia, wrote a book about her experiences, and eventually settled in the United States. There is also a documentary about her life. You can find her current reporting on China and her other work on the web at jenniferzengblog.com and on her YouTube channel, which may not be working at the moment. She also has several other portals where you can find her.
Yes, thanks for Chris' introduction. Briefly, my story. I was born in 1966. That is the year when the Cultural Revolution started. So my family actually experienced persecution when I was a child. We were relocated to a very small town, and my mother and father were separated for many years. So that was a very hard time for our family. So I grown up in loneliness. I even dare not, or my father and mother didn't actually allow me to play with other kids, because if I had a fight with other kids, this could be regarded as a class struggle between, the bad guys and the workers or the working class at that time in the Cultural Revolution are the ones that can rule the intellectuals, which is the bad elements of the society. So after the Cultural Revolution ended, my father was transferred back in a relatively bigger city and ultimately became a lawyer. And I was admitted by one of the top universities in China, which is Beijing University. So I gained a Master of Science from Beijing University, and I also joined the Chinese Communist Party when I was in the university. And at that time, as everyone, although my own family was persecuted, but however, because I grown up in China, and every one of us was taught that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, was the savior of China. And if you want to do any good, or if you want to have any good recognition in the society, to join the party is the only way. So I joined the party, and so up to then I think because I joined the party, I did well in the school. So after I graduated from Beijing University, I worked for the Development and Research Center of the State Councils, and so that was the highest level government policy research and consultant bodies. So I worked there for a while, and when I gave birth to my daughter in 1992, I encountered a medical accident. I lost a lot of blood. I encountered actually 2 huge hemorrhage, and as a result, I almost died. So after that, I lined in the hospital for years. I couldn't work. I couldn't look after my daughter. And I was so despair. Sometimes I felt I was sentenced to death, only to be executed maybe several years later. But life changed for me in 1997 when my parents and also my sister, they started to practice Falun Gong, and they sent my questions toward human life, toward the universe, and towards everything. So I was immediately attracted by its profound and yet simple teaching, which is, 3 principles to follow in your daily life: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance or forbearance, plus 5 sets of gentle exercises, including meditation. So I started practicing Falun Gong in July 1997, and fairly soon. And I think after only 1 month of daily practice, I went to have a medical checkup, and I found all my previous health problems gone. So I regained health, I regained vitality and energy, and I feel like a new person, being reborn. So I went back to work, and my family was so happy to see that I recovered health. So everything went back to normal, and we lived for very happy 2 years after I regained health. But in 1999, when the CCP realized that there were more Falun Gong practitioners in China than Chinese Communist Party members, Falun Gong was introduced to the public in 1997, the same year I gave birth to my child. So in several years, because it was very beneficial to people's health, both mental and physical health, and it was free. It doesn't charge people any money. So it's developed very fast in China. So in 1999, the government estimated that there were somewhere between 70 to 100 million Falun Gong practitioners in China. So that made the CCP feel threatened. Although Falun Gong is not a political organization or has any political agenda whatsoever, but in China, the CCP is a one-party system. It fears anything that is not within its control. And so because Falun Gong believes in something else, it chose compassion and forbearance, not communism, so it felt threatened, so it started to crack down on Falun Gong. So as a result, I was arrested 4 times and then sent to Beijing female labor camp for 1 year. And during that 1 year, I think there were so many moments. So the life it is in the labor camp was extremely difficult. So every day we had to get up at 5:30 in the morning and work until midnight. Sometimes we didn't sleep at all, so that our products could catch the plane of the next day. And almost all the products we made in the labor camp were exported to Western countries, and that was made very clearly to us. As the police told us, you must make sure the quality of your products, because they were all exported to foreign countries. And also the police told us the only purpose actually for us to be sent there is to get us reformed, which means to force us to give up our belief in truth, compassion, and forbearance. And not only that, to prove that we are transformed or reformed, we need to write long articles to criticize Falun Gong, and to read those articles in front of all the people in the labor camp, and got that process video recorded so that you won't go back to your words. And the worst thing is we were forced to torture other Falun Gong practitioners to prove that you are really truly transformed. So after withstanding all the torture for 6 months, and after witnessing all those torture and death and inhumane things happening around me, sometimes I felt like in a dream. I felt like going back to the last concentration camp that I watched in the movie and read in the history book, and I couldn't believe this was happening in the 21st century in Beijing. And the labor camp is actually less than 30 kilometers from Tiananmen Square, where Beijing Olympic was held. So after 6 months of withstanding the torture and witnessing all these inhuman things, I developed a very strong desire to write a book and to expose all these crimes around me. And I was faced with a dilemma right away. If I don't reform, I will never ever be released. But if I reform, I need to do all those things they require to prove that I have been reformed. So for the rest 6 months, I struggled every day with between my strong will to get out and my unwillingness to do what they want to force me to do. So that kind of struggle almost killed me. For another 1,000 times, it was much, much worse than all the physical torture I had to experience before. But I think we don't have that much time to talk about the details. So I hope if you are interested in knowing what's really happening in the day-to-day life in the labor camp, you can get a copy of my memoir, which is Witnessing History, One Woman's Fight for Freedom and Falun Gong, and read for all these details. Anyway, I survived all this with a very, very strong determination to survive, so I can tell the world what was happening in the labor camp. And I escaped after I was released to the from the labor camp in 2001. I escaped successfully to Australia. I sought asylum in Australia and I came to the US 10 years ago, or actually 11 years ago. So that's basically my story. And for the past 20 plus years, I've been always trying to expose the persecution of Falun Gong and the wider human rights abuses in China. And sometimes I feel so sad that the world most of the time looked the other way and didn't do much to help to stop the persecution and to stop the CCP from doing more evil. And that's why later we saw that the same kind of persecution and especially the tactic they developed during the process of the persecution of Falun Gong were extended to Uyghurs in Xinjiang and to people of Hong Kong. And we saw that large-scale camps were also set up in Xinjiang. They were also sent to the camps. And also, I forgot to mention about the organ harvesting. Falun Gong practitioners, including myself, were blood tested and in the labor camp so that our blood type and tissue type could be stored in a big database. So if anyone in the United States or anywhere else need an organ, the search inside that database find a match and kill that person on demand so that his or him or her organs can be sold for profit. So later on, I think Uyghurs are also suffering the same kind of atrocity. So large-scale DNA and blood testing is also done in Xinjiang. And then in 2019, we saw the total destruction of Hong Kong in front of the entire world. The Hong Kong people, millions of them took to the street to protest, but still, the CCP totally cracked down on the people of Hong Kong. And now I think I want to talk a little bit about how the unchecked government power could do and has led to the disastrous zero COVID policy in China. So now, since the end of 2019 and since the COVID issue started, in the past almost 2 or 3 years, the CCP is also using its iron fist control method to control the entire population of China. I'm not sure whether you have watched the recent, videos and a lot of pictures showing how terrible the situation in China is. So, in order to control this, they call it a zero COVID policy. They want to eliminate the COVID or the virus completely. So they locked everybody inside their home. And right now, 26 million people in Shanghai are virtually still locked up in their own homes, and they call it hard lockdown. They really put up tapes, seals, iron sticks to block you totally, physically, inside your home. And you cannot go out, and you cannot go out to buy food. You have to wait for the food delivery from the government, but the government doesn't have the capacity to look after everybody's needs during the lockdown. So we saw people starving to death. Some people killed themselves because they suffered too much pain because they couldn't seek any medical treatment. So this kind of, I think, that's raise us a very profound question. So to what extent we can give the power to the government in the name of COVID control or pandemic, fighting pandemic? In China now, we can see that the government has unlimited power. So all laws are useless. They can just issue a lockdown order, so everybody is physically locked down and home. And also they developed a very I think sophisticated digital management and tracking system. So they develop a concept called space and time companion. What does that mean? It means if, for example, I tested positive, and they use your cell phone to track the location and when you've been to that location. So if anybody have stayed within the 500 meters and a square of 5 meters long of, no, sorry, 800 meters long and 800 meters wide, that a huge square. If anyone has stayed in the same area in that square for more than 10 minutes with me, your health code on your cell phone will immediately automatically turn yellow, and you will be put into another category, so that they will track you, they will test you to make sure you are not positive. So they use your cell phone location to locate virtually everybody's every movement to find out the so-called time and space companion of those who have spent more than 10 minutes together with someone. Even if you are 8 meters away from that person, you are still to be tracked. And also they have developed not only a health system, but also a so-called travel code. For example, I heard this is a true story. A truck driver drive maybe all the way from northeast China to southeast China, and because he passed maybe a province, Henan province, and there was cases in Henan province, he actually didn't stop. He didn't get off the highway at all, but because he has passed through Henan province, his travel code automatically turned yellow. So when he arrived at his destination, he was not allowed to enter the city. He had tens of millions of pieces of, the little fishes he needed to deliver to the fishers, farmers who raise fish in their ponds to make money. So tens of millions of fish died on his truck because he was not allowed to go inside that city. So all sorts of ridiculous things are happening. I think right now during over the 1 month lockdown in Shanghai, tens of thousands of people might have already died, not of COVID, but of lacking the possibility to seeking treatment. And some people really starved to death. I don't have time to show all the videos and pictures to show how terrible the situation in Shanghai and other lockdown cities are. But I hope if you search for my YouTube channel, Inconvenient Truths by Jennifer Zeng, and watch my videos. I follow closely what happened in China. Yes, I got strikes. I got banned from YouTube was for a while, but right now it's still open running, although they gave me a lot of yellow flags, but still a lot of videos are available there. So I think we are watching in real time what the unchecked government power can do to their citizens and what kind of suffering people would suffer if they lose their freedom anywhere, and anything can be turned into a prison at any moment. So I think the purpose for me to show all these videos and images and do these shows is really I'd like the Americans to see what is happening in China and whether we want to adopt the same kind of model and follow the same kind of so-called communist or socialist ideology, and to turn our society into something similar to theirs. I think I've used up my time, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer. We're going to go on now to Darian Diachok. He escaped from Ukraine as an infant. He is an international energy consultant by trade, for example, serving as USAID's energy advisor to Ukraine and Moldova. His ongoing mission is to help the countries of the former Soviet Union democratize and overcome their failed communist systems. As a filmmaker, he has made documentaries on the legacy of the Soviet Union and its attempt to modernize. He is a published book author. His historical novel, Escapes, available on Amazon, recalls the dangers his family members faced in the time of Hitler and Stalin. I guess I will go ahead and give my presentation and hope that Darian gets straightened out, his technology gets straightened out by the time I'm finished. Okay, my presentation is called 12 Stories That Show What Life in China is Really Like. And these are stories that I've collected over years of reporting on life in communist China. These stories have appeared in a weekly news page on the Anticommunism Action Team website, which I'll be showing you a little bit later. So the image of China that they like to project is that people are prosperous and happy, that China is, they hold themselves out as a model to the world. You have people like Thomas Friedman of the New York Times saying that the Chinese authoritarian system is better, and that's the question Jennifer left us with at the end of her presentation here tonight. So we'll see what you think after these 12 stories. I, for one, would not want to live under Chinese communist rule. And I was going to start with the COVID lockdowns, but Jennifer has given us quite a bit of detail about people being fenced in, their doors being nailed shut. So we'll go right on to the next topic, which is the rule of law. Now, we originally had a speaker, David Kilgore, for this presentation, but unfortunately he died right before before we got this announcement put together and publicized. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about what David was going to tell us. He was going to tell us about the rule of law, how we have it. He was Canadian, but they have the rule of law in Canada. And in China, they do not have the rule of law. Now, my information comes from a book. It's called China's Walking Dead by filmmaker Kay Rubacek. And it's an astounding book because what she's done is she's collected a number of defectors from the Chinese communist regime. These were people who were in the police force. They were running prisons. One was a heart surgeon, one was a judge. And they got out because they knew what they were doing was wrong. They got out and they ended up in this woman's book. So one of them said, China is run by one party, the Chinese Communist Party, which rules the nation like a dictator. Since the CCP violently seized the nation, it has always said that the law is a tool of the ruling class. So it says it can use the law to suppress anyone it deems an enemy, and anyone that opposes the CCP is an enemy. Now, what this leads to is corruption. Again, from the book, in China, the law is not important. Everything is about personal relationships. If something bad happens to you, you don't think about going to the police or to the court. You find a bureaucrat through a personal connection, and you bribe him to solve your problem. This is called money law, and it is the solution of first resort. This is what they first think of. This is what they first turn to. And in another way, their lack of rule of law system is different from ours, operates on different principles. The lower ranks unconditionally follow the decisions of the rank above them, who in turn unconditionally follow the decision of the rank above them, and so on. And this is called democratic centralism. It was formalized by Lenin, and the CCP uses it as its basic principle of operation. Uses it as its basic principle of operation. And rank trumps law. Rank is the law. So, to put it in our terms, what they have in China is a government of men, not laws. Now, the book goes on to show that the CCP is at the top of the heap. It's the top rank, so it trumps all lower ranks. So anything the CCP says, that's what goes. So you get a judiciary that's not independent. All the decisions are made beforehand by party officials. They just go in the courtroom. The judge pretends that there's some kind of evidence or trial going on, but really it's all rigged. It's all a rigged game. It's all been decided by the party beforehand. So that's the first aspect of how life in China is different from what we have here. They do not have the rule of law, and we do. The next aspect is forced organ harvesting. Jennifer touched on that, but I will tell you that when I did research on this 4 or 5 years ago, it was already a $9 billion industry where they were killing prisoners of conscience for their organs. And I am assuming that it's the barbaric practice of killing people for their organs has only gotten more extensive since then. And the Chinese military is involved. It's how one way the military makes its money. Another aspect of life in China that's different from here is that they have a complete surveillance state. So one story that I ran in on the website, the ACAT website, what do you get when you marry 626 million surveillance cameras, facial recognition, and every database in the country, including license plate numbers, banking information, etc. You get China, the perfect surveillance state. Another aspect of the surveillance state, how would you like to do this? China's largest ride-hailing company is now recording in-car audio during passenger trips. So think about that. Every time you get in a taxi or an Uber, the government is listening in, or potentially listening in, or at least recording everything you say. Well, that's different from what goes on here. Another aspect of the surveillance state, China spies on its citizens using drones that look like birds. So, boy, we don't have that here. The next aspect of life in China is that they have social credit. Now, a lot has been written about social credit. The subject's been around for at least 5 years, and we have an expert on it on the call here tonight, Paula Weiss, who put it in her book. So I won't say too much about social credit, but I'll just give you a couple of little snippets to show you the flavor of what life is like under a social credit system. And I will tell you that people are worried enough about social credit starting up here in the United States that there is legislation in New Hampshire and elsewhere to stop it from happening. But in China, if you get caught on camera jaywalking, then maybe you don't get to send your kids to private school. You either sort your garbage or maybe the state won't let you buy property. So they reward good behavior, they punish bad behavior in that way. There is another aspect of social credit. The number of people who have been denied air travel and rail travel was up to 23 million as of 2019. I didn't track it after that, but as of 2019, it was already over 20 million people who had been affected by social credit. And the final aspect of social credit I will mention is that it is so powerful in China that a gray market has developed for low social credit score people to buy points to boost their social credit scores. Another aspect of life in China that's different than here is that you are not free to move around the country. So in any given week, I live in the DC area. I might travel to Maryland. I might travel to DC. I live in Virginia, and nobody stops me at the border. But in China, they have a system where you have an internal passport, and it's a governmental system that registers every household and determines where people can live, where they can work, where they can go to school, and how they can claim benefits. Another aspect of life in China that's different from here is thought control. So Jennifer found this story. She found a CCP children's cartoon book celebrating the 70th anniversary of the party. And in that book, a child who was considered a little red star, he is portrayed as a hero. And what did he do to earn a hero status? Well, he burned his landlord to death in his bed. So they condition the young from a very early age to think in terms of class enemies. Another aspect of thought control is that there are forced loyalty displays. So you have to show your allegiance to the party. There are self-criticism sessions where you have to berate yourself in front of a group of people. And another aspect of life in China that's different is if you do something wrong, they'll punish your family members. Well, that doesn't go on here. Another aspect of thought control is from the Defectors book. Controlling public opinion is the same as caging up citizens like animals. Their goal is not to let you know the truth, not let you talk. I keep telling you lies in order to make you keep following me. Another aspect of thought control from the same book in the US, different ideologies clash and create sparks leading to varied and rich outcomes. But in China, everything is tightly controlled. They only allow one point of view, one perspective, one belief. Everyone must follow that. No one is allowed to think outside the box. So a very stark difference between their system and ours is that we get access to every website in the world. We just call up our web browser and put in our search term in our search engine, and we can get information freely and from anywhere. But in China, the ordinary people are put behind the Great Firewall, and they don't have access to the world internet like we do. The final aspect of thought control that's worthy of noting is that arts and entertainment is in the service of the state. So in 2021, just last year, China moved to align its TV programming with Communist Party dogma. And it told celebrities no more incorrect politics or speaking against public order and morals. And in the process, a lot of celebrities, or a number of celebrities, lost their top-rated shows on TV, and they lost their fan clubs. Well, that doesn't go on here. A couple of other aspects about life in China. They always say that there's equality under communist systems. Well, that's not true. Well, as Jennifer mentioned, you have to be a member of the CCP to get into top schools and jobs. Another way they have inequality there is they just shove it under the rug. So the low status people like the street sweepers and the trash removers, they do their best to make them invisible. And another thing that they always say about China is that there's no racism. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the Han Chinese are at the top of the heap, racially speaking, and they engage in the subjugation of the other so-called nationalities through brainwashing, cleansing hearts, strengthening righteousness, and eliminating evil. And that's all by purposeful and by design, and that's all shown by internal documents. Now, going back to the Defectors book for a moment, to sum up the effect of all of these things on the average person, gradually you will lose your true self, your soul or your spirit. That will die. That's The Walking Dead, and that's the title of the book, The Walking Dead. You know, in China, sometimes, this is a heart surgeon now, you know, in China, sometimes I was drunk and then did operations on people. And this heart surgeon went on to talk about how the police drink and get drunk before they go on the job too. In the U.S., we the people are sovereign, and the government is supposed to protect our rights. That's our system. But in China, it's completely different system. The nation is a tool to suppress people. If you are not evil to the extent, one defector said, you cannot grasp the true horror of the cruelty in China. These things are written clearly in the regime's theories. So if you expect the regime won't prosecute or kill, you haven't studied their theories well enough. So just to cut to the bottom line, this is a regime that's willing to do anything, even kill its own people to maintain its control. And that makes things like Tiananmen Square, forced organ harvesting, and strict COVID lockdowns with people fenced inside their houses more understandable. And I will conclude with a quote from Ronald Reagan. I couldn't find the quote, but I'll paraphrase it from memory. Under our system, the state serves the individual. Under socialism, the individual serves the state. So, China, nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. Okay, we have Darian back. I've already introduced Darian. Let's see if we've got sound. I can see your camera now, Darian. Let's see if we have your sound.
Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Go right ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I feel very humbled after Jennifer's presentation. Someone who experienced all these things and my family actually escaped. Although I think about a third of my family did not survive when the communists took over. Okay, I never actually, I never worked in China. I worked in the former Soviet Union for about 4 years. And right after its collapse, and I got very interested in why it collapsed. And especially now that China has come up as the second largest economy of the world. What did China learn from the collapse of the Soviet Union? Is China sustainable now? Did it learn enough from Russia's collapse to go on to become, quote, a success? Well, we have to go back a little bit, I think, to why the Soviet Union collapsed. When the Communist Revolution occurred, Lenin accepted Marx's ideas. Lenin, of course, was the founder of the Russian Revolution, and the basic idea that Marx had was that all of the superstructure in the West, which is the church, banks, trade associations, professional associations, all of that which we call collectively, we call that civil society. He believed that all of that constrained the working man from achieving his true potential. And if you just destroy the superstructure, then the working man will know spontaneously how to create a worker's paradise. And when the communists took over, when Lenin took over, they tried exactly that. They destroyed the entire superstructure, all of the trade associations, all of the all of the agreements farmers had with other farmers, whatever it was, all of that was destroyed. The leaders were shot. And so then they waited. This amazing thing was going to happen, this workers' paradise, and it didn't materialize. People didn't know what to do. And so Lenin tried to jump into the situation, and he tried something called war communism, in which the communist side just simply made decrees. The farmers will turn all of their produce to this sector. This sector will produce everything and turn it to that sector. They tried to jump in, and they tried to be like the traffic cop to get the economy going again after they had destroyed it. It didn't work. Eventually, there was starvation, and there were protests, and the communist regime had to bring out its army to shoot the protesters. And at that point, Lenin said, you know something, we don't really know what the hell we're doing. And what we need to do is take a step back and allow the free market to develop a little bit. It leads to the point that farmers produce enough so that starvation stops. So he introduced a program he called it the New Economic Program, which was a step back, allowing the free market to operate a little bit. And it included, like, instead of taking all of the farmers' produce, leaving just a little bit for the farmers, just give the farmer a tax, let him produce whatever he wanted and trade whatever he wanted. Let's reintroduce money back into the system. They actually outlawed money. Let's pay people according to how much they work rather than according to their class status. Let's start banks again. And the entire system, this program, he called NEP, NEP. It turns out that there was a young Chinese man present during that time in Russia. His name was Deng Xiaoping, a very familiar name later on in history. And he observed NEP. He observed an operation, and he said, well, yes, this is the way to go. It's a mix of the private sector and the public sector. And the private sector will function under the supervision of the public sector. And he remembered it. He later went on to China. At this point, Lenin said, hey, the farming sector has done so well by reintroducing private incentive. Let's do the same thing for factories. Let's bring back the profit motive. Let's bring back private initiative. And at that point, Joseph Stalin, we all know Joseph Stalin, said, no, at this point you've gone too far, because this is basically retreating back into a free market. We want to do Marxism, complete Marxism. So Lenin disappeared under very, very unusual circumstances. Stalin took over, and he created a vertical structure with communism at the top and everyone else a cog in the wheel of this great communist structure, which they controlled everything. They controlled the economy, they controlled the press, they controlled culture, they even went to control religion. It was a complete totalitarian system. Now, where are they going to go with this? Well, they're not going to try to imitate Botswana or Somalia. They're going to imitate the West. They're going to imitate the economy of the West, but under their own total control, which they felt if we're under complete control, we can speed up the process and we will surpass the West. And how can you fund something like that? Well, they had slave labor, just as they did in China. They had slave labor so they could skim off, they could take the value of the labor. Plus, they had a lot of timber, they had oil, they had gas, they exported all that. They brought in Western technology to build up their economy. And in the beginning, it seemed to have worked pretty well. The first things that they aimed for was the major industrial behemoths that would make the society, that would make the economy work, such as the world's largest hydroelectric power plants, the world's largest steel plants, the world's largest chemical factories. And in the beginning, it worked. The Soviet economy was pumping out, was producing like almost 6% GNP per annum, but it came at a horrible price. And it also came with the horrible price, of course, was people sent to the Gulag, people executed. But it came at another price. It came at a price of tremendous inefficiency. Since they had outlawed the idea of economics, they didn't know how much they were spending to produce anything. Eventually, that led to bankruptcy. And also, everybody was constrained. No one was allowed to innovate. Everybody had to do exactly what their job description was. There was complete suppression of the individual. With time, you couldn't just simply rely on these mega economic things. You had to develop other sectors of the economy. And that's where problems started to come in. Eventually, the Soviet economy developed thousands of different sectors. And each sector had its own peculiarities, its own engineering, its own economic problems. And so all of this could not fit very well under one economic structure. As you can imagine, if you want to change the color of a lipstick from pink to red, and you've got to go through this massive economic pyramid of layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy, eventually you're not going to be able to do it, or it will take years and years and years, and you will keep falling behind. And all of the subsectors began falling behind. There simply wasn't enough brain power at the top to understand how to supply each sector, how the entire economy was interrelated. Okay, and at that point, the economy started dropping from 6% to 5%, eventually to 4%. And people at the top, the communists at the top, saw, hey man, this is going to bankruptcy if we don't do something about it. So there were a few visionaries within the Soviet system who proposed creating layers of the economy, not just one pyramid, but layers, where you would have an independent agricultural sector, you would have an independent consumer sector. You would have, instead of Moscow deciding everything, you'd have regional sections working with who understood their own economic problems better, who understood their own talent better. And the ideas, the early ideas of NEP, of the new economic program, let's reinstitute that. Of course, those were great ideas, but there was enough there was enough opposition within the Communist Party. The guys at the top did not want to lose power, and so eventually the people trying to bring in various kinds of improvements, they lost their positions. Sometimes they lost their lives, and eventually you could see it happening. The Soviet economy went down to 2%, down to 1%. GNP per annum, at the same time that China, communist China, was also was collapsing under Mao, with the same kind of rigid Marxist ideas. We cannot, the problem is we aren't, in their stupid minds, we're not being Marxist enough, and both were leading towards complete destruction of the economy. In the Soviet Union, the economy did fall apart. In the 1980s, eventually they got to below 2% per annum. And it turns out that they were doing far worse than they were reporting, because they were cooking the books. Their actual economy was just a fraction of what they were reporting. Okay, and during and in China, people were watching this, people were observing this, including Deng Xiaoping, who had been in the former Soviet Union and who had watched the success of NEP. And he proposed to Mao, he said, we have a solution. Your great leap forward is just simply falling on its face. And Mao's solution was to imprison Deng Xiaoping, the same thing as what was happening in the Soviet Union. Eventually, Mao died, and eventually, through a lot of ups and downs, Zheng got the power, and he got to introduce basically NEP, a new economic program, which included the creation of a massive private sector within the Soviet economy. So it was the same kind of an idea of the private sector coexisting with the public sector. And once the Chinese, as we all know, are some of the most entrepreneurial people in the world, they were just waiting for this opportunity to break free. Now, one of the major differences between China and Russia was Russia funded its industrialization through oil, gas, and slave labor. In China, they would have to do it through intellectual property theft, through slave labor, and through replacing economic sectors in other countries with their own cheaper goods. It worked remarkably well. In the first years of China, the first years of after Deng Xiaoping's improvement of the economy went into full gear, it went up to 10%, and with 10% GNP per annum growth. And with growth like that, they started to attract incredible foreign investment, and it kept the whole process rolling. While that was going on, the very top sections of the economy, which was the public sector. The public sector was the heavy communist sector, and they didn't operate under the rules of return on investment. They didn't have to concern themselves with turning a profit. They were the kings of the system. They would make incredible decrees, very stupid decrees sometimes, like, well, we will double our steel production, and of course it went down. The law went down, and everybody had to double the steel production, even though there was no market for twice as much steel. This is just an example out of many examples where the Communist Party at the top makes uneconomic, rather stupid decisions, which currently the 10% growth can cover. The Chinese system also included in addition to private sector companies, it had a completely Soviet, not completely Soviet, but government-run companies, so-called SOEs, who could not fail because they were completely their salaries were paid for from the top, and they could also create all sorts of they could think up projects which weren't necessarily economic. They would always be rescued from the top. It was the bottom sector, the bottom hardworking people who actually kept the top afloat. All right, so what the Russians wanted was to imitate the Western economy, the Soviets, wanted to imitate the Western economy, which grew over centuries because it was a free economy, because it was a free society. There were certain laws within the free society which allowed the creation of the economy. What both the Chinese communists and the Russian communists or Soviet communists wanted was an imitation of the Western economy without its underlying institutions which permitted it to function, without its underlying political philosophy which allowed it to develop.
Darian,
Yes.
we've reached the end of the hour. Can you wrap it up?
Yes, I can. Okay. There is a Chinese economic development philosopher by the name of Zhang Qichao, who just recently said, "We have stolen everything from the West that there is nothing left to steal." Okay. That sounds remarkably familiar to what a US patent commissioner at one point said, that everything that can be invented already has been invented. Do you know when that statement was made? It was made in 1899. So there is a great deal more that's going to be invented. And China, the Communist Chinese Party, might not be around to steal it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Darian. Okay. Here's your book, Escapes. Darian, where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. Just if you type in my name, Darian Diachok,
Okay.
it'll come right up.
All right. And same question to Jennifer. Jennifer, where can people find your book?
Yes, I have put up a link to buy to where people can buy my book and Amazon at the chat section. So if you go there, also the link to my website, to my YouTube channel, and my Twitter and Facebook page account.
Okay, good. My last question will be for Darian. Now, Darian, you and I read the same book about the Chinese economy recently, and you have undertaken a study of the Chinese economy. And the title of the book is The Bubble That Never Pops. And there's the perennial question, okay, the Soviet Union crashed. So is the Chinese economy, their version of central planning, is that doomed to crash? Also, have you reached any conclusions about any of that?
The statistics that I saw was the Chinese economy is going from 10% to 5% in the space of about 15 years, 10, 15 years. If you project that out, then within about 20, 25 years, it should reach zero growth unless they make very, very serious changes, and those changes might be jettisoning Marxism completely and adopting what the people want, which is like they march in Hong Kong as well as in Tiananmen Square. They marched with the Statue of Liberty. They know what they want. If they can get that, then they will survive past 20 years.
Okay, and this came in during Jennifer's presentation. Was there a way to stop it all? For example, there must have been brainwashing going on in the schools. Was there a way to stop that before it all came to a head and they took over? So, Jennifer, do you have a response to that question?
I'm not 100% sure about what this question is about, but I think right now it is very difficult unless we at least enable the Chinese people to have the ability to access free information. Right now, all the schools, all the textbooks, and all the things people can see in society in schools are controlled and are actually written by the CCP. And also the most important thing is the internet. Through the Western companies' help, the CCP built up a so-called Great Firewall. So in China, we thought internet is connected, it's free, you can get everything on the internet. But in China, they have an intranet, not an internet. So it's an internal website of China. So everything inside China on the internet are also controlled by the government. I think maybe if we want to change that, the most, I think, effective and the feasible way is to try to tear down the CCP's Great Firewall and let the Chinese people to have access to free information. Otherwise, it was very hard. The other day, I just translated a little girl. I think she is maybe only 9 or 10 years old. She talked about what is American dream and what is Chinese dream. So I think she must have learned that from school. So according to her, American dream is about making money, making US dollars, about exploiting others. And the Chinese dream is about serving the people and the common prosperity. So she said in the end of that 30 seconds video, don't mention the American dreams in front of me in the future. Disgusting. That's what she said. So I feel so sad to see a little girl being brainwashed like that. So I think if the Western government and countries do have the will or a political will to change that, I think it is not that difficult to break through the firewall of China. Like in this Russia-Ukraine war, Elon Musk was sending his Starlink equipment to Ukraine, helping Ukraine people to have free access. If he does something similar to Chinese people, and let Chinese people have free access to the internet, I think that will be a very useful and powerful way to start a meaningful change inside China. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult. So little children got so brainwashed so badly. I don't see any other opportunity that we can, help or stop that.
Well, I have 4 quick comments. The first is the little girl who was talking about common prosperity. The articles I'm reading recently are that Xi Jinping was talking about all of that in the last couple of years, but it's turned out his policies, his more Marxist policies, have turned out to be not so great. So now they are retreating from those common prosperity policies. So it may be that this little girl is a little bit behind the curve. So that's one quick comment. Another is, you mentioned breaking down the Great Firewall. I understand that people can get around it. There is software to get around it. How commonly used is that software? Are we talking about 5 people in the whole country, 500 people, 5,000 people? How many people are getting around the Great Firewall, do you think?
I don't have the exact number, but I think it must be at least in millions or tens of millions of that number. So especially young people in the cities, I think especially after the lockdown, more and more of them realize that they need to get free information. And I heard some of other my friends who run Chinese language YouTube channels. So their audience are many from China, and they really thank these YouTubers for telling them what's really going on in China to get them prepared. Otherwise, they could be in big, big trouble. So I don't think there's any official number of how many, just my rough guess. It could be right, it could be wrong.
Okay, and we talk about breaking down the Great Firewall. Well, there is this entity out there called Radio Free Asia, theoretically broadcasting into China. Why isn't that doing the same? Why isn't that doing the work of breaking things down and breaking the information monopoly that the CCP has?
I think Radio Free China, they either they broadcast into China, I think use radio, unless you have a special, I think certain frequency, that sort of video radio, you can't receive the other program, or on the internet again they are blocked like all other non-CCP approved channel. So if people don't have, I don't think many people are using radio now. And also the CCP is interfering their broadcasting. They know their frequencies. They use powerful, some kind of machine to interfere with the frequency of the broadcast. So it became very difficult for people in China to actually to listen. You need a radio and a special frequency and in that kind of range. So I think they are rich, or they have some people who, if they jump over the firewall, maybe they know. I think they do have quite some audience in China, but not everyone. So yeah, now I understand your question. Actually, this is happening right after the establishment of the CCP's regime in China. From the very beginning, the first thing they do after they took power is to give everyone a class category. So according to how much wealth or how much money you have, so they educate the peasant who didn't have any land, that the landlords are the evil ones. So I think 2 million landlords were killed by the peasants or by the CCP-led peasants, and the promise: if we kill all the landlords, we seize all their land, and we give all the lands to everyone, so everyone has an equal part of everything. So from ever since the CCP took power, so everyone has a label on you. Which class do you belong to? Do you belong to the landlord or rich peasants or poor peasant? So from that time on, everyone is given a different label, and the CCP is very good at inciting hatred among different people, and have people struggle against among themselves. Like during the Cultural Revolution, the young kids were told that if your parents belong to the band class or like intellectuals, you need to show your determination to follow the party by actually denouncing your own parents. So that's during the Cultural Revolution, many young students, young kids really beat up their teachers, their parents, and denounce their connections to their family. So that's because, like I said, all the propaganda machine is controlled by the CCP. Like Chris said, also if you belong to a wrong class or you don't do anything like what the CCP told you, everyone that surrounds you got affected. So after the Cultural Revolution, like for example, during the persecution of Falun Gong, like if I don't reform, all other prisoners in the same room as me, they were also punished. They were not allowed to sleep like me. So they all hated me. They all want to beat me up. If I was in a workplace, even my leaders got punished. And during 1 year, they gave a quota to my hometown, which is Mianyang City in China. They said if this New Year's holiday, if more than 6 people from Mianyang City go to Beijing to protest for Falun Gong, the mayor of city will be removed from his post. So they have this kind of not only brainwashing and tactics. So all the times they use the same kind of tactics, and even as soon as right now, during the COVID, um, you know, zero COVID policy, if you tested positive, the whole building will be affected and all taken away. So people actually, if they are not positive yet, but you are positive and they are affected because of you. So everybody will hate you. And if you test positive, you got discriminated by the whole, by all your neighbors. So this kind of ridiculous happening from day one until right now. And now they always, give people different labels. Now the label is whether you are positive or whether you are negative. Like this time, there's a joke, like in Beijing, the outbreak is in Chaoyang district. Yang in Chinese means positive or the sunshine. So Chaoyang is towards positive. So people are saying, no, we should change that name to Chaoying. Yin means negative. They want to change their name so that we don't get, positive in COVID. So that's how ridiculous this situation now. I think because the CCP has the control over all the resources in China, and they make policies to turn people, against each other. So they save their trouble, and people will report, those positive ones. And if you are from Shanghai, you got discriminated. You are not allowed to enter into your neighboring province, and the local people will guard against you, on behalf of the CCP. Like after the crackdown of Falun Gong, in my own home, I was watched and monitored by my own mother-in-law. So the police, the CCP even didn't need to send a police to my home. My mother-in-law, watched me to make sure I don't practice Falun Gong, because she know if you don't listen to the party, you got the entire family in danger. So she watched over me on behalf of the CCP. That's the real situation in China. Very, very terrifying. Yes, I think, in the 5,000 years, China is many, different dynasties where the emperor rules the country. But at that time, I think there were periods that people's morality is very high. So the government then didn't have that much power as the CCP now. But I think in 1911, when the last emperor of China, Qing dynasty, was overthrown, and the first republican, I think in Asia, the Republic of China actually was established in China. Since then, I think there was a short period of time. I think China is learning from the West and is adopting the same kind of the republican system, which is still alive in Taiwan now. So I think there is opportunity that China can be like what Taiwan is now. But unfortunately, I think during the World War II, the US, I think, made a wrong choice to decide to support the CCP, for them to support the effort to fight against Japan, against Germany, and fascism. So since then, I think the CCP, what they did is they destroy all the traditional values and culture, and so there's no chance for China either to adopt the ancient Chinese culture or learn from modern, civilization in the world, in the West. It chose the worst system, the ideology, the communism. So that was very unfortunately. But look at Taiwan. I think Chinese people and Chinese culture do have the possibility to transform, smoothly from imperialism into a modern civilization.
All right, that'll do it for tonight, folks. Thanks for being here. See you again, hopefully on May 26th. Good night, everybody.